Okay, I forgot. We let me find that. Let me mute here since we're on the phone.
There you are. There you are. There you are. There you are.
Okay. Okay. Is
Okay.
that okay? Let me turn this off, I guess. Should I turn off my phone? I'm gonna turn my phone off. Okay.
All right, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Okay, anytime that you are ready, Sister Kinard, just
I can't hear. I can't see. I can't see myself now. There's a screen. Let's see. Share your screen. I don't need that.
no.
How do I get cancel? I'm gonna hit cancel. Okay.
Can you see yourself?
I see myself
You
side
see
by
both of
side with
us?
you.
Okay, great.
Do I need to make my screen full screen, you think?
That is up to you. You can control that from your local end.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so we can get started if you are ready. Good
Um,
morning, folks. I am so glad. Thank you for bearing with us as we got ourselves adjusted here. I am excited about this. I am with Sister Marjorie Kinard. She is one of the sages. She will be able to share some wisdom with us. I spoke with her several months ago because she was on an event and I heard her talk about capital campaigns, and my ears perked up. And I said, okay, I have to hear more about what this sister has to offer. And we had a nice discussion about capital campaigns, and I picked up several chunks of wisdom that I can apply in my church for a number of things. But enough about me. I just introduce you to Sister Marjorie Kinard, and I'm going to ask her, tell us a little bit about yourself.
well, thank you so much, Chuck. I hope you can hear me, and I hope everyone can hear me well. Very good. I've had, as far as this topic is concerned, I've had almost 50 years of experience in fundraising. Now, to look at me, of course, you would not believe that. Some of you might. But when you think about the fact that when we are youngsters, we begin to learn about fundraising. We begin to think about money and how it affects us in our churches and in other organizations to which we belong. And so before I even got a job and I was in elementary and junior high and high school, we were always involved in some kind of fundraising. Then, as I grew up, of course, professionally, I've always worked as far as raising funds were concerned in my church and in civic organizations and other organizations. And of course, when I went to Livingstone College, I was director of alumni affairs, and that was always fundraising. And I went to Barbara Scotia College and more fundraising. And of course, all the while working in my local church in fundraising. So I can say with some assuredness that I've had the experience needed to talk with my friends here this morning about having a capital campaign and raising funds. I must say that maybe about 5 years ago, I was involved with my church, John Wesley, AME Zion Church here in Washington, D.C. And we were charged with the task of raising $500,000. And I'm pleased to say that we not only reached our goal, we surpassed our goal. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today to my friends who are sharing here today, because we want to make it plain and simple. It's not a hard thing to do. Now, of course, there are professional fundraisers these days who are out there just raising big money, millions and millions of dollars. And of course, they are hired to do that. And it does pay when you're going to try to raise millions of dollars. It pays to have professionals to help. But I think when we think in terms of our churches, when we think of our civic organizations to which we are involved, I think us doing it ourselves with help from others who've been successful, I think it makes it all the worthwhile. And that's what I'd like to talk with us today. The topic is building a capital campaign.
Now, Sister Kinard, if I can jump in there for a minute, I'm glad that you put the topic in that form, because most people tend to think that capital campaigns are for buildings, but that's not necessarily the case, is it?
That's not necessarily the case, Chuck. You can have a capital campaign to achieve any of the goals your organization desires at the time. Of course, in churches, we hear of capital campaigns because we want to renovate buildings, we want to improve buildings, we want to build a church. So we might have a capital campaign. However, your capital campaign is just a targeted fundraising effort that takes place over a defined period of time, maybe 3 to 5 years. And it may involve working toward a scholarship. You might want to have scholarship funds for your young people. You may want to work in the community and have several community projects that you need money for. So a capital campaign is expanded to include many more things than just a church fundraising building effort. Now, in the capital campaign, you must think about restricted giving and unrestricted giving. Because when you raise money, you're raising it for a purpose. If you are having a building fund, say, as an example, for your capital campaign, then that is restricted funds.
So you mean you can't take your building
You
fund?
can't take your building fund money and use it for scholarship. You can't take your building fund money and use it for community action or involvement programs. That restricted money is just for that. Now, you can have an unrestricted campaign where those funds can be used at will for whatever situation the church or organization chooses. Because you may want to sponsor some young people in a scholarship this year. Next year, you may want to have a homeless program, and you might want to work with that. So those are unrestricted funds. Now, there comes a time also when your capital campaign may want to involve an endowment. You might want to set up an endowment program. And an endowment program is raising money, but you are not going to spend that money anytime soon. Endowment money, say you're raising $25,000, $100,000 or more. That money is restricted to the extent that you're investing that money. And once it gets to a certain amount, you may be able to use the interest off that or a piece of that money to fund a project. But that endowment is going to go on forever. And that endowment is going to grow as you raise funds for it. Now, for an endowment, you may not have a fundraiser for that, but maybe every 8 years, every 10 years. But for a building fund, you may do that more often. Now, as I said before, the building fund or capital campaign, which involves other projects also, may be from 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
3 to 5 years. And you need 3 to 5 years. I mean, you can't really raise real money, Chuck and my friends. You can't raise real money in a year. I mean, you can have an event and have some little play money to do something with. If you have an immediate need, you can raise a few $1,000, $3,000, fine. But when we're talking about big money, $100,000, $200,000 or more, you need time because a lot of planning is involved. And we want to kind of talk about organizing your capital campaign.
So this is more long range planning that we're looking at.
This is long range planning from 3 to 5 years. Now, it doesn't have to take 5 years. You can do it in 3 years, but you want to have enough time. You want to give yourself enough time for everyone to buy in. Because say, for an example, you're talking about your church.
Okay.
The capital campaign money is given as contributions over and above your tithes and offerings. So if you rush it, your members are going to say, well, I can't give that. I can't do it. I can't do it. Well, I'm going to give my tithes. I'm going to stop giving my tithes and I'll put my tithes in the capital campaign. No, you don't want that because you need your tithes and you need your offerings. So when you give yourself enough time, then people can sort of see how they can work it out, how they can sacrifice and kind of put a little something aside every pay period or once a month for a capital campaign. Now, it is important. What did you say?
I'm sorry. I was going to just jump in there. How do we educate our congregations and our organizations to that? Because I think you make a great point. If you think that the tithes and offerings are going to cover something that goes above and beyond, you might start borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. How do we educate our congregations to?
Well, now, the congregation, that's the first point in organizing the capital campaign. You've got to consider the needs of the church or the organization. What are your needs? You must have everybody buying into it. You can't have some people over, oh, I don't agree with that. We don't need that. We don't need that. You need to take your time and convince everyone that what is about to happen is big enough, achievable enough, and valuable enough for everyone to participate. So then you have to have consensus on exactly what you want to do with the capital campaign funds. If your roof is falling off the church, if there are things that need to be renovated, you're not going to have too much of a problem convincing people to handle that. If you want to have a homeless program or something in the community, some people might say, well, I'm tired of us going out in that community. I don't even want to be going out there being around those people and all of that. So you may have more of a problem getting everybody to buy in, but you must take time. You cannot rush because you want everybody to understand what the needs are, what the goals are, how much money you need, because you don't want to underestimate the amount of money you need. You want to know exactly how far you want to go in this. If you have programs other than for the building, you want to know how much money do we need to effectively do the job we want to do. So then the second point I want to go to is team building. Once you have decided what the needs are and the goals for your campaign, you've got to build the committee or the team. Now, sometimes organizations don't put the time into building the proper team. You can't just throw any old body together. You've got to have the leadership that people respect, that folk are going to say, well, I know he's not going to do nothing with the money. He's honest. He's honest. We can get on. We can go with her because she's not going to take the money. And when people have little feelings about the leadership and their abilities or qualifications or things they have done in the past, they're very hesitant. So whoever the chairperson is and the leadership is very important to people. So, and then if you're having a successful capital campaign, you don't need people who don't want to raise money. There are people in every organization who will tell you, I can't sell tickets. I'm not selling tickets. That's something I don't want to do. I can't ask people for money. Well, if you have people like that, why are you going to put them on a campaign where people are going to have to ask for money? They can help in another way. So then you must take the time to build your team. Now, so I'm saying, Chuck, that in leadership, whoever the leadership is for that campaign, that capital campaign committee, you need to look around for the people who would best serve the capital campaign committee. Once you have identified them and they have agreed, the door is not closed to other people who may want to join in, because you don't want people to think, oh, that's just a little clique. That's the clique. Those the pastor's buddies, or they always doing stuff. So you want to open it up to anybody who wants to join in the capital campaign. You always want to give the impression, and it's not just an impression, it's the truth, that It's open to anybody because we all belong to the church. We all belong to this civic organization. We all belong to this community organization. So we can all work together. And so building that team is very important. And once you build that team, there are subcommittees that need to be considered, and we'll talk about that later. Perhaps someone may want to ask some questions about that. But now I want to move on to the development of a gift range chart. Once you decide on a capital campaign, what's going to be the financial goal? What's going to be the financial goal? Is your financial goal $50,000? For some churches, that's a lot of money. Trying to raise $50,000. Is your goal $75,000 or even $25,000? Whatever your goal is, you've got to break it down. You've got to break it down to achievable goals. In other words, how many people are you going to need to give $1,000? How many are you going to need to give $500? How many are you going to need to give $250? How many are you going to need to give $100? In other words, there is a chart. I wish I had all of my information. Maybe if you invite me to your church to talk about this, I can bring all of my materials and show you. But in other words, you have your goal, and then you have to figure out the tiers of giving. In other words, the tiers of giving, so that after your 3 to 5 years are up, you have achieved your goal. At least you're trying to. And then once you do that, you're on your way. Now, we all know that it takes money to make money. So you've got to have a budget. You've got to have a budget. So in other words, you're going to need some seed money. You're going to need money to work with. Now, sometimes organizations don't have seed money for it. So they may have to, people on the committee might have to chip in. So that's why you're going to need people who are sincere, because you might say, well, everybody, if you have a committee of 30 people, and that's not too large a committee, each one of us has to give $25 as seed money to just put in, because you're going to need stamps. You're going to need some little office supplies. You're going to need different things in order to put you in a position so that you won't have to worry about the little things. See, so you're going to need that. Then you're going to develop your budget in terms of other things that you're going to need, because as quiet as it's kept, people, I learned this a long time ago, people give to people. They're going to give you money, and they're not going to give it to anybody else. Have you ever been in a situation where you're raising funds in the church and people will give their money to the pastor? Now, he's not even on the committee, but they want him to see that they're giving the money. And so you realize that it's not a big deal and it's no skin off our back as long as we get the money. So people give to people. Sometimes people give to causes. But I find that our people give more to people than to causes. Now, they will give to causes, but they will give to people. So we determine so I say all that to say, we're going to have some kind of recognition. If they know that their names are going to be put on a plaque for giving to the capital campaign, that's fine. We had a tree for our capital campaign. And our highest donors, we asked for $10,000. So we were able to get 13 people in our church to give $10,000. Then we went to $5,000, $3,000, and on like that. So then we had different colors on the tree for specific amounts given. Now that costs. You
So
you have to purchase those little leaves. You have to purchase the tree. See, so these are the kinds of things that need to be investigated so that you can put that in your budget. Because even if you're going to have those big plaques with those little gold, what do you call them? They're not labels, but where you can put a person's name on it. You know what I'm talking about? And
okay.
you just affix the name onto the board. Even that, those are expensive because you have to take them to the engraver or the printer and they engrave the name on it. See, so those are the things that go into your budget along with other things that you will have.
So I've seen things along those lines for
Mhm.
building campaigns, for an
Yes,
example, where you go and you see that there are bricks that are engraved with the
yes,
names of certain people.
that's
And
right.
obviously, as long as the building stands, you'll be able to come by and see that person's name engraved.
Exactly, exactly. And
Okay.
people like that. They want to see their names up. And you can't take that too lightly. They want to see their names. And then they relish in getting certificates with their names on it that they can see. And they want you to call their names and they want to stand up so people can see them. These are things that people in our churches want. And in order to be successful, you must give it to them. Now, every now and then you'll come in contact with somebody who will say, well, don't mention my name. Don't tell anybody that I'm giving. But everybody else likes to. Now, for our capital campaign, we had pledges. And I think every capital campaign would need pledges. And say, for an example, somebody will pledge $5,000 and they will give that over a 5-year period. They pledge the $5,000 and they decide within themselves how much they will pay every pay period or once a month or that kind of thing for the 5 years. And when you break it up like that, it doesn't seem as much as if you just ask the $5,000. Now, some people can just give you $5,000 like that and be over with.
Hmm.
And some of the elderly in our church did say that, well, I want to pay my money on out because I might not live five years. You see, so and that's okay. You'll take that money and smile and be just as happy as a lamb. Now, you had asked the question before about getting people to buy in and everybody to work together. You need a case statement in a brochure or some kind of page statement. We developed a brochure, just a trifold, and it told about our campaign. It gave information about when we were going to start, when it was going to end. We had a pledge form attached. It would with just their name, their address, and how much money they pledged, and all of that, so they can tear that off and give it to us. Now, during our capital campaign, we at John Wesley, each time I got a pledge, I mentioned the person's name during the 11 o'clock worship service. They loved it. They loved it. Now, some people didn't want their names mentioned. I respect that. But most of us wanted our names mentioned. So that's a good thing. Anyway, that little brochure that everybody gets, and you have plenty of them. You put them in the pew, the little thing there in the pew, so people can get them whenever they want. We also develop envelopes. You know how you have your offering envelopes or your tithe envelopes? We had capital campaign envelopes, and we used the color blue so that whenever we saw a blue envelope being put into the offering tray, then our financial officers knew that that was for the capital campaign and they should save it for us because we were going to count our own money back there where the finance committee is, so that we could turn it right over to the church treasurer. So there was no hanky panky. Everything was above board. And that's the way you have to keep it. That's the way you have to keep it.
So does that work with, I noticed with, in today's day and age, you have a lot of the electronic giving like Givelify. And
Yes.
do allow you to sort of set aside where that money is going to be directed.
Exactly. Now, back then, we weren't using Givelify and Cash App and all of that. Now it's going to be so much more easy because I don't think we're going to be having capital campaigns during this pandemic. So this can be the development, the first phase, the development phase. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, in 3 phases. And it's going to be so much easier now with Cash App and all of that, GoFundMe. And we're going to speak about that. So, but still, even with that, there are people in certain age groups who are not going to do any kind of Givelify or anything. They're going to give you a check. And in some cases, they're going to have cash rolled up in a little something. And they can, either way, you want your money. And so you're happy to get it. Either way you look at it. Now, you're going to have a communications plan, because it is important that the entire church knows about it and the community knows about it. Something needs to be in maybe perhaps the newspaper, in our case, the Star of Zion, other kinds of communication, because at some point we're going to go live with it across the community. Then too, we must have a built-in something that says thank you to everybody. And sometimes people forget to say thank you. But that's very important, to say thank you. It needs to be in writing. It may be some little trinket, some little gift or something, but a thank you needs to go in there somewhere. I did not mention the marketing plan, but we need a marketing plan for our capital campaign. I mean, we're really talking being professional here within the church, within any 501c3 organization that you're working with, fraternities, sororities, drug treatment programs, any kind of social programs, endowment, anything, you need to have a marketing plan also. And it's important that we keep our donors updated. They want to know what's going on. Now, with our campaign, I was the chair of our campaign when we exceeded $500,000 goal. And every week, and later every other week, I was letting them know where we stood with the campaign. You can't keep your mouth shut. People want to know how you're coming with it. And we did one of those, you've seen those thermometers.
Yes.
Where we had a nice big thermometer. And every Sunday morning, I would go and I would I used magic marker, red magic marker, and I would mark, color in where we stood. We went up, 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 up. And it was just wonderful for them to have a visual, so that keeping them updated was very, very important. And you need those people who have pledged, you got to remind them. You got to keep them reminded. You made a pledge, and you don't want to harp on a minor chord with people, because that'll make them mad. So you have to be very discreet. Chuck, how am I coming with time?
Oh, we're
doing well.
We're doing okay.
Okay. Very good. And of course, building excitement around it. Every now and then you have to bring out some balloons and you have to celebrate where you are. You have to do something special for people who have pledged, and those who have not pledged. You don't want to make them feel guilty, but sometimes you do make them feel guilty. And sometimes they have reasons for not participating, and that's okay. It's okay if they can't participate, but if they can, you certainly want to make the opportunity available for them to participate. So you need to build some excitement.
If they can't
And
participate, if I can jump in there,
uh-huh.
is there a way for them to be able to pull others in? You know, I understand if they're in a position, a financial position that they can't afford to do it, is there a way or an opportunity for them to pull in others who can?
Yes, they can pull in others, but sometimes they won't pull in others. But the thing about it, as long as they don't complain to others, you see, as long as they don't complain to others. Well, what we did was we thought about them and made an opportunity whereby they could participate with $50 or $100, you see, over a period of time. And we have to realize that not everyone in our various organizations are at the same financial level. And so we can do things to make everybody feel a part. And then, since we will be hosting several events during the capital campaign, perhaps they cannot pledge, but they can come to the event and support the event and be on the events committee and help us to achieve those goals. So that's very important, very important.
Can we take a moment before you go on, because we're at 11:37. We have about 8 minutes. I want to see if there are any questions from
That
any,
sounds good. That sounds good.
you know, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We want to make sure that we can take some time to answer any questions that you have. And I know I've been asking questions as we go along, so maybe those questions have been answered. But let's see. Not seeing any questions yet, so if you want to keep rolling.
Okay, very good. I had mentioned that the campaign is developed in phases. We have the planning phase, the quiet phase, and the public phase. The planning phase takes a good while because you want to take your time. I talked about some of the things that we would consider our goals, our objectives, what the needs are for the organization or the church. We want to build our team. We want to get our case statement together. We want to develop our marketing plan. We want to do all of these planning type things, our budget and all of that during the planning phase. Okay. Now, we want to finish the planning phase before we move forward, because we want to know everything that needs to be done in our capital campaign. And we don't want to leave anything out, you see. So we're going to take our time. We might take a year, at least 6 months in our planning phase. Then comes our quiet phase. And some of you who've had been fundraisers before with other organizations, you hear them talking about the quiet phase. Now, the quiet phase is that period of time where you get commitments from people in a quiet way. You just walk up to them or call them on the phone or send them a letter or do something that asks them if they will contribute a certain amount of money. I might call you Chuck and I'll say, Chuck, we're getting ready for the capital campaign. can you make a pledge of $5,000 for our campaign over the next 5 years? And you would say, of course, I'll be glad to do it. Or I might say, go to someone else and I might say, would you be willing to give $3,000? In other words, you actively approach donors for specific amounts. And you may have a cadre of 50 to 100 people that you're going to ask. Now, when I asked our people for the $10,000, I had to, you don't know who has money. You don't know who has money. Don't underestimate people, because the ones who drive the sharp cars and dress in finery might not be the ones. They got money, of course, they ostentatious with their money. But I have found that there are people who are very unassuming. They don't say much, but they got money. But you got to know your people. You got to know your people. So when I approached them about $10,000, they kind of laughed. And I said, well, think about it. I'll call you back. I called them back. They said yes. So now it doesn't always happen that easily, but that's what I'm saying. Get people that will, number one, help you. Number two, they have bought into the idea and see the importance of the project. Number three, they have something invested. Say, for an example, if it's something for the community, they see that this is something our church really ought to be doing, and I want to share in that. Or if it's a scholarship endowment fund, they may have grandchildren or great-grandchildren that they know will reap the benefits of this contribution at some point. You see, so you really got to know your people and how to get in there. So then, if your campaign is a $50,000 campaign, by the time you're ready for your public phase, you will go public with everyone else with maybe $30,000 or $40,000 already at hand. So then, if that's the case, you just have to raise $10,000 more if it's a $50,000 campaign.
That is great. Sister Kinard, we have hit the time limit. I'm going to, you're more than welcome to go ahead. I don't know if anyone wants to go out, but before they do, if anyone wants more information, is there an email or contact for you that you want to share?
They can email me at MA Kinard, KINARD, at hotmail.com. And I can shoot them just what I'm talking about here today. That's M as in Marjorie, A Kinard, KINARD, at hotmail.com.
Okay, I'm putting that in the chat for anyone who would like that. And I don't want us to get cut off, but if anyone wants to stay until your next session, you're welcome to do it. Sister Kinard, if you want to give us a little bit more information about the public part of the public phase, feel free to continue.
All right. Okay. Well, now the public phase still involves, say, members of the organization, members of your church. And I think they would be so pleased to know that you already have some money to start with. So now let me say this. It is important, if it's a church, that your trustees, your stewards, your church leadership ought to be the first donors, because they're buying in quickly. They know the importance. And if they're going to be in the church leadership, they certainly ought to be able to support the capital campaign and its purposes. So I'll leave that there for that to marinate on any officers of the church or other organization. We have to take that responsibility. So then when the public phase comes, that's when our marketing plan takes over. We go into the community. We might send letters out of solicitation. We may ask our members to talk to businesses that they deal with on a regular basis, the barber shop, the hairdresser, the local stores, to get funds, to solicit funds, and we just go out into the community. That's the public phase. So we have the planning phase, the quiet phase, and the public phase.
Okay.
And did you have something to say, Chet?
I was going to say, I think we are out of time. We are hitting the time for the next sessions to start.
All right. Well, I have enjoyed this. The time went by so fast. Finished, but that's okay.
Well,
I certainly
understand. I'll be giving you another call to finish this up, even if it's on a one-on-one basis.
That sounds good. Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
And thank you. And thank you, everyone who stuck around. I know we're getting ready for our next set of sessions. So feel free to leave this session so that we can get the next session prepared. Just go on and hop into one of those next sessions. Sister Marjorie Kinard, we thank you for such a wealth of knowledge, wisdom, and information.
Thank you so much. All right. You take care of yourself now.
Okay. God bless.
All right. God bless you. Bye-bye.